Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're putting on our detective hats to decode the bizarre, chaotic, and sometimes literally painful symbols our unconscious minds use to send us an SOS. You see, our brains have this incredible, almost cinematic way of translating our deepest psychological struggles into midnight theater. And sometimes those visions are so intense they actually hurt. So, let's dive right into the surprising, hidden logic behind our nightmares and uncover what our minds are so desperately trying to tell us.
Let me ask you, have you ever woken up with a lingering physical pain from a dream? And I don't just mean a racing heart or a cold sweat. I'm talking about an actual phantom ache in your muscles or a stinging sensation that sticks with you long after your eyes open. It's incredibly easy to brush that off as just a bad night's sleep, right? But that lingering pain is often a massive, undeniable clue. It's visceral evidence of a violent clash happening deep within you. A collision between your true, raw inner desires and the heavy expectations society places on your shoulders every single day.
Let's look at our first major clue from a truly fascinating case study, dream. The dream kicks off in this suffocating, hyper-corporate setting, a real estate training presentation. The dreamer is standing in front of a room, being forced to pitch the charm of entirely mundane things like kitchens and toilets, using completely fabricated, fake numbers. It's absolutely soul-crushing. But what's so fascinating about this opening scene is how perfectly it mirrors waking life. It brilliantly illustrates the exhausting, inauthentic roles we're so often forced to play just to be seen as a useful cog in the machine. It's that suffocating feeling of performing a script you don't even believe in just to survive the workday.
Pushed to the absolute limit by a demanding senior colleague in that boardroom, the dreamer suddenly snaps back with a profound, rebellious realization. They say, "I could speak passionately about my own life." That right there, that is the core SOS signal. Stripped of the fake numbers and the endless corporate metrics, this is a desperate, deeply human plea to be heard. It's a cry to be valued for who they truly are, a complex human being with a story, and not just some corporate tool meant to drive fabricated sales. It's the true self, violently kicking back against the artificial persona.
Okay, so from that moment of rebellion, the narrative of the dream takes a wild turn. Fleeing that suffocating corporate presentation, the dreamer wanders into a creepy, dusty, antique art classroom and then literally slides down a thin, cold iron pole into the darkness. This physical descent is incredibly symbolic. It represents leaving the rigid, surface-level world of societal rules and fluorescent lights and plunging deep down into the chaotic, ancient, and untamed caves of the unconscious mind. We're moving straight from the waking world's expectations down into the basement of the psyche.
Way down in this deep, shadowy, unconscious space, the dreamer runs into this old, wizard-like art critic who delivers a completely devastating psychological blow. He whispers, "Modern art lacks individuality, so it isn't appealing." Now, this isn't just a critique of some paintings. This is the exact curse paralyzing the dreamer in their waking life. It exposes a crippling, terrifying insecurity, this deep-seated fear that they're completely empty inside. It's the dread that they lack the unique identity or transcendent individuality required to stand out in the modern world. It is literally imposter syndrome, manifesting as an ancient wizard.
Unable to handle that devastating critique, the dream logic suddenly just shifts genres entirely. It turns into a video game. The dreamer is now looking down at themselves from a third-person camera angle, wearing nothing but flimsy, fragile aluminum armor that crinkles with every step. In psychology, this is a textbook representation of a defense mechanism we call dissociation. When emotional pain or insecurity becomes just too overwhelming to bear, the mind brilliantly acts as a shield. It pulls the ripcord and detaches you from your own body, letting you view your trauma from the outside, like a spectator, just to survive the emotional hit. And that cheap aluminum armor, it perfectly highlights just how fragile their self-image truly is.
So, with those psychological defense mechanisms fully activated, all that repressed energy is violently unleashed and the dream turns aggressively chaotic. Suddenly, the dreamer is flying on the back of a massive dragon, breathing scorching fire through dark caves, and, most shockingly of all, attacking a happy, smiling couple, turning them into this bizarre, glowing video game item called human powder. This is exactly what happens when years of suppressed envy, societal isolation, and loneliness finally detonate. The dreamer's silent desperation morphs into this massive, destructive force aimed directly at the happiness and connection of other people.
But here's a profound question we really have to ask ourselves. Why destroy the very connection you so desperately crave? The dreamer wants to be understood and loved, yet they're incinerating a happy couple. Turning loving human beings into mere items or powder is a brutally tragic defense mechanism. The mind is so utterly terrified of the agonizing pain of loneliness and rejection, it decides to just completely devalue human connection altogether. It crushes that connection into something meaningless and transactional, just so the lack of it can't hurt them anymore. It's the ultimate expression of self-protection through destruction.
Now the dream hurtles toward its absolute breaking point, a complete and total loss of control. The dreamer realizes they're stuck in this spiraling, destructive loop, and in a desperate bid to take the wheel of their own life back, they reach out to physically grab the video game controller. They just want to pause the chaos. They want to steer the ship. This moment of reaching for control is the climax, where the unconscious mind decides to deliver its final, most painful lesson.
The second they touch that controller, an excruciating, visceral pain shoots right through their hands. It feels as if the very skin of their fingers is being slowly sliced off by unseen razors. The dreamer screams, "I cannot do this anymore," and violently wakes up, their hands actually throbbing in the real world. Think about what this actually means. Our fingers are how we grasp reality, how we manipulate our environment, and how we take action. This horrifying pain perfectly symbolizes the mental agony the dreamer faces in waking life, where simply trying to make a choice, take agency, or control their own destiny feels like it physically tears them apart.
Yet buried inside this chaotic, terrifying nightmare of dragons, fire, and razor blades is a fascinating and beautiful contrast. In between all the grand battles against societal pressure and inner demons, there's a surprisingly gentle, quiet scene. Tucked away in the dusty corner of that creepy art room, the dreamer is simply hitting a ping-pong ball back and forth with an awkward, quiet old classmate. No fire, no armor, just the rhythmic click and clack of the paddle. Why on earth does the unconscious mind insert such a peaceful, mundane moment into an otherwise apocalyptic nightmare?
Well, this modest, simple ping-pong rally represents the dreamer's true, deepest, and most hidden desire. Think about the mechanics of a ping-pong rally for a second. It's inherently back and forth, it requires equal effort from both sides, and it has a comforting rhythm to it. It symbolizes a safe space for genuine human connection, completely free from the crushing, exhausting pressure to be highly productive or to pitch fake real estate numbers or possess some transcendent individuality. It is just equal, simple, expectation-free communication. It's the quiet relief of just being allowed to exist in the same room as someone else.
Tragically, though, this fleeting moment of peace gets almost instantly destroyed. A teacher suddenly yells, "Be quiet!" And that exact same senior colleague from the boardroom is standing in the corner sighing heavily with deep disappointment. These authority figures aren't real outside forces invading the dream, they are the joy killers living inside the dreamer's own mind. They represent a deeply internalized guilt and self-loathing. It's that toxic inner voice whispering that you should always be productive, you should always be working, and that simply enjoying a quiet, simple moment of connection is a shameful waste of time.
So let's open up the Dream Detective's case file and look at what we've brilliantly decoded today. The flimsy aluminum armor? That was a desperate shield for a highly fragile self-image. The agonizing razor-sliced fingers represented the paralyzing mental pain of taking real-world action and making choices. And that quiet ping-pong match was a deep, starving craving for true, simple human connection without the crushing weight of expectations. What initially looked like a chaotic, senseless, terrifying nightmare was actually a brilliantly logical, incredibly desperate SOS from the unconscious mind, just begging to be understood.
The most crucial takeaway from decoding all of this is understanding what that pain actually means for us. The messy contradictions, the dark, destructive emotions, and the lingering psychological pain swirling inside you are absolutely not signs of failure. The agony you feel, just like those sliced fingers in the dream, is undeniable, beautiful proof that you are fighting hard to live. It is evidence of your incredible resilience as you navigate a waking world that constantly demands entirely too much of you. Your mind is fighting for your survival, even when you're asleep.
I want to leave you with one final, powerful question to chew on as you go about your day. What hidden emotional scars are shaping your unique individuality right now? You don't need to fake the numbers for a corporate machine, and you sure don't need to be a flawless masterpiece of modern art right this second. When you finally stop hiding your messy, chaotic truths and actually start to accept them, that is exactly where your true, irreplaceable individuality begins to shine. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer, and keep exploring the fascinating depths of your own mind.